I'm Katie Couric. Tonight, reaction to the Virginia Tech shooter video from his classmates.
He's just a madman.
And roommates.
So it's pretty scary that he was right outside my room taping those videos with guns when I was inside.
Attorney General Gonzalez under fire and under oath about the firing of U.S. attorneys.
I regret how they were treated, and I apologize to them and to their families.
And new evidence of a connection between hormone replacement therapy and breast cancer.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Hello, everyone. A lot of reaction today to that video message from the Virginia Tech shooter. Angry reaction aimed at news outlets, including this one, for airing portions of it. CBS News plans to use this video only on a limited basis and only when we feel it's necessary to tell the story. Law enforcement is using it in its criminal investigation to try to understand the killer's motives. We have two reports tonight, beginning with our justice correspondent, Bob Orr.
The graphic videotape and sadistic snapshots only reinforce what investigators already knew. Virginia Tech killer Sung Hee Cho was a deranged loner, intent on exacting revenge for his own feelings of isolation. But sources say Cho's hate-filled manifesto has provided little useful evidence. In a rambling diatribe sent to NBC News, Cho sought to justify his plans for mass murder.
He forced me into a corner and gave me only one option.
Blaming everyone but himself for the killing spree. Today, investigators criticize the media for broadcasting images which they say glorified Cho and inflicted new pain on those already shattered by his rampage.
Though we're rather disappointed in the editorial decision to broadcast these disturbing images.
Many on this campus, still reeling from Monday's slaughter, agree, saying they've now been victimized twice.
He put that video out there so everyone could see it. It means we're doing his wishes, which I don't agree with at all.
Investigators say Cho had been planning his murder spree for at least 2 months, and time date stamps on images from Cho's computer and digital camera should help them further refine the timeline. It's clear, looking at the backgrounds, Cho recorded his ramblings at various times in at least 3 separate places: his dorm room, inside a rental car, and from an undefined location. But sources say the pictures also raise questions. Did Cho have help? Did someone else take the pictures or have any knowledge of his plans? A preliminary analysis suggests Cho took the pictures himself, but FBI photo experts are still studying details. And criminal profilers are taking apart Cho's statements word by word, trying better to understand the mind of the man behind the guns.
The way he talks on the tape, the disjointed manner he talks, the sort of delusions of grandeur, those things are symptoms of mental illness that we don't, as far as I know, was not treated.
Finally, investigators are also looking for any clues as to what set Cho off. His rampage came just days short of tomorrow's anniversary of the Columbine massacre. And in his tape, Cho praises the Columbine killers. And there's a question whether the Korean-born Cho drew any inspiration from an ultra-violent Korean-made film called Old Boy. 2 of Cho's photos, one with a hammer, the other with a gun, closely mirror promotional shots for the movie. The release of Cho's graphic images has set off a predictable wave of would-be copycats and hoaxes. A number of schools around the country have received threats, and already at least 1 student has been arrested for carrying loaded guns to a high school near Seattle. Bob Orr, CBS News, Blacksburg, Virginia.
I'm Sharon Alfonsi with students who hoped the video would help them understand Cho.
The video was I just lost it.
It didn't.
You know, I mostly just wanted to see his face and what his eyes were, but other than his background, I really don't care. I mean, he's just a madman.
That madman lived 12 feet away from Karan Grewal, and he did see something he recognized in the video: the walls of his dorm room.
You think that he could have been right in your dorm room making those videos?
The backdrop looks exactly like our suite. The chair that he's sitting on looks exactly like the one in our suite.
Grewal shared a suite with Cho for the last year.
It's pretty scary that he was right outside my room taping those videos with guns when I was inside.
He believes Cho was planning the killings for months. He says in February, all of a sudden, Cho started going to the gym and sitting around the common room of the suite, silently watching his roommates come and go.
It's a really scary feeling that he was out there, monitoring us, plotting this horrific thing that he did.
And he believes plotting a time to make the video in private, revealing a madman who masqueraded behind silence. In Seoul, South Korea, his great aunt says the family was told Cho was autistic when they arrived in America. She says from the beginning he wouldn't answer me. He doesn't talk. He was very cold.
He had a purpose in mind, and his purpose was taking lives.
Garrett Evans was in his German class when Cho stormed in. A bullet is lodged in his left leg.
But you know something? I'm blessed. I am truly, truly blessed because God spared me, and I saw the devil at work.
But today, something greater is at work at Virginia Tech: healing.
The first step, and the most important step, is to forgive. I forgive that shooter.
And that may be the easy part. With images of Cho everywhere, forgetting, even for a second, what happened here now seems impossible. Sharon Alfonsi, CBS News, Blacksburg, Virginia.
6 of Cho's victims are still in the hospital tonight. One of them is in serious condition. Today was the anniversary of another massacre, the Oklahoma City bombing. At a memorial service, mourners remember the 168 people who were killed when Timothy McVeigh bombed the Murrah Federal Building. And they also prayed for the victims of the Virginia Tech shooting. In Washington today, Attorney General Alberto Gonzales made his long-awaited appearance on Capitol Hill and swore to tell the truth about the firing of 8 U.S. attorneys. In a new CBS News poll taken before Gonzales testified, 63% of respondents who have been following the story said he hasn't told the truth so far, and 36% said he should resign. And as Gonzales appeared before the Senate Judiciary Committee today, another fellow Republican agreed. Here's our chief White House correspondent, Jim Axelrod.
Alberto Gonzales knew Democrats would come after him today. The surprise may have been how many Republicans hit him, and how hard.
Good morning, Chairman Leahy, Ranking Member Specter, members of the committee.
Conservative Tom Coburn from Oklahoma.
And I believe you ought to suffer the consequences that these others have suffered. And I believe the best way to put this behind us is your resignation.
That makes 3 Republican senators who've now called for Gonzales to resign. Arlen Specter, the committee's top Republican and a former U.S. attorney, attacked the AG's shifting explanations for the firings of 8 U.S. attorneys.
Because I know you've been preparing for this hearing.
I prepare for every hearing, Senator.
Do you prepare for all your press conferences? Were you prepared for the press conference where you said there weren't any discussions involving you?
This is the press conference Specter was referring to.
I never saw documents. We never had a discussion about where things stood. Senator, I've already said that I misspoke. And the truth of the matter is, Senator,
Let's move on. I don't think you're going to win a debate about your preparation, frankly.
Gonzales admitted mistakes in how the prosecutors were fired, but remained adamant the decision was justified.
The decision stands. It should stand. And I believe it was a right decision. I regret the way in which it was implemented.
That stance opened up Republican floodgates.
Mr. Attorney General, most of this is a stretch. I think it's clear to me that some of these people just had personality conflicts with people in your office or at the White House, and, you know, we made up reasons to fire them.
But I have to tell you that the way that this investigation has been handled is just been really deplorable.
Today's testimony may have convinced more senators it's time for Gonzales to go. If he's aware of that, he's not indicating he's any closer to making that decision.
And every day I ask myself that question. Can I continue to be effective as leader of this department? The moment I believe I can no longer be effective, I will resign as Attorney General.
Well, tonight it doesn't appear that the president is going to ask him to resign. Aides say Mr. Bush was quite pleased with the AG's performance today. But top Republicans continue to insist it's a question of when and not if Mr. Gonzales will be told it's time to go. Katie.
So, Jim, if the president is happy with his testimony, but his leaving is inevitable, what mechanism is in place to have him removed?
Well, it's not entirely clear it's inevitable yet, and it's a loyalty thing for the president. What would happen, Katie, is that top Republicans like, say, Chuck Grassley would determine that Mr. Gonzales was now damaging both their agenda and the party. They would go see somebody like the president's chief of staff and say, you've got to pull the plug.
Jim Axelrod at the White House tonight. After years of rising breast cancer rates, there's been a sharp decrease, an estimated 16,000 fewer cases in a single year. And tonight, doctors have a new clue to why that is. Here's CBS medical correspondent Dr. John LaPook.
It's the most compelling evidence yet that hormone therapy used to ease the symptoms of menopause can increase the risk of breast cancer. When millions of women in menopause stopped taking hormone replacement therapy in 2002, the rate of breast cancer plummeted the following year and stayed down by nearly 9%.
There is no question but that the drop in the use of postmenopausal hormones starting in 2002 had a very direct effect on breast cancer in 2003 and in 2004. There's no other explanation for it.
Women have avoided hormone therapy since a 2002 government study linked it to heart attack, stroke, and breast cancer.
I just made the decision years ago not to take it.
I've been off them for several years already, and I don't think that I would start again.
We were doing something that we thought was helping people that was actually causing breast cancer.
Researchers believe the hormones may have been adding fuel to existing but undetected cancer, especially the type that thrives on estrogen.
As far as I'm concerned, estrogen replacement therapy should be used very, very rarely. The fact that so many people are taking it and increasing the risk of breast cancer is of great concern to me.
Whether or not the hormone therapy actually causes cancer or just makes cancers that are already there grow is something doctors will continue to research.
So,
Katie?
John, what is the bottom line? Should women reject the notion of HRT, hormone replacement therapy, altogether?
Well, if you're somebody at high risk, meaning you have a family or a personal history of breast cancer, then you and your doctor may decide, you know what, it's just not worth the risk. But if you're somebody at average risk and you have severe symptoms, and problems can include problems sleeping, hot flashes, mood problems, you and your doctor may say, you know what, it's worth the slight increased risk, or whatever risk there is, in order to start taking the hormone therapy, and we'll take it in the shortest amount of time possible in the smallest possible dose.
All right, Dr. John LaPook. John, thank you. There is much more CBS News ahead when we return, still stranded, days after a storm that many say was worse than a hurricane. New Jersey Governor and former U.S. Senator Jon Corzine remains in critical condition tonight, 1 week after he was injured in a highway crash. Officials say his SUV, driven by a state trooper, was traveling 91 miles an hour when it crashed into a guardrail. Corzine was not wearing a seatbelt in violation of state law. He broke a number of bones and ribs and fractured a vertebra and is still on a ventilator. The sun finally came out today in New Jersey and much of the Northeast after this week's massive storm, but it's going to take a long time for the floodwaters to recede. In New Jersey, more than 1,000 people are still in emergency shelters, and 40 communities are under a state of emergency. Michelle Miller reports from Patterson, which is still largely underwater.
4 days after the nor'easter stormed across the eastern seaboard, rescue teams are plucking residents from second stories. Others are clearing their own path.
You're trapped here?
In Patterson, New Jersey, Tina Malave stood her ground against the rising tide of the Passaic River. Though her neighborhood was evacuated when the water seeped into her home, she decided to stay to sweep it out.
10 times worse.
Even today, the storm remnants are overpowering flood control systems all over New England, sparing few low-lying areas. People hoping to drive out of danger instead left their cars abandoned in 3 feet of water, as were homes in Pennsylvania and main streets in Massachusetts.
Near my business, everything is on the water. I never seen it so high.
Where there's major flooding, schools are closed. In Bronxville, New York, classrooms are a muddy mess.
Our hope is to get back in business as soon as possible, as early as next week.
New Jersey's acting governor says damage from the Passaic River is in the tens of millions. Dolores Walker still can't believe how fast the river rolled in.
You're a good 100 yards from the river.
But we would never thought that that little river over there would have flooded. The whole block is flooded.
The rain has stopped, the sun is out, and still residents along the Passaic River can't dry out. The National Weather Service says it will be at least another day before the waters recede. Michelle Miller, CBS News, Paterson, New Jersey.
Overseas tonight, Iraq's prime minister called the violence there an open battle. This follows the bloodbath yesterday in which more than 200 Iraqis were killed in suicide bombings. And today, Defense Secretary Robert Gates flew to Baghdad to read the riot act to the Iraqi government. Earlier, while in Israel, he said the Bush administration is running out of patience and wants all the factions in Iraq to put aside their differences so they can stop the violence.
I'm sympathetic with some of the challenges that they face, but by the same token, to pick up General Petraeus's theme, the clock is ticking.
And today there was another attack in Baghdad. 12 Iraqis were killed when a suicide bomber blew himself up 500 yards away from the home of President Talabani. Coming up next, the future of abortion in this country after the Supreme Court's controversial ruling. The battle over abortion is heating up again tonight after the Supreme Court ruling upholding the ban on a procedure opponents call partial birth abortion. Here's Wyatt Andrews.
To abortion rights supporters, the Supreme Court ruling was a legal and medical disaster for women. Their argument is, if women cannot have the so-called partial birth abortion, where the fetus is removed mostly intact, the result will be thousands more abortions requiring the dismemberment of the fetus inside the womb.
So the doctor is going to either be doing things that are less safe or is going to be having additional steps that could pose more risk to their patient.
Both sides in the abortion debate agree that yesterday's ruling will unleash new state restrictions on abortion. In the decision, Justice Anthony Kennedy virtually invited the states to have women seeking abortions learn more about the way in which the fetus will be killed. Anti-abortion rights groups, which believe more graphic information will discourage abortion, hailed that part of the ruling.
Telling the states they have a legitimate interest in making sure these women also know what they're engaging in and what's at stake is going to have just huge ramifications.
The court's decision also showed the importance of Justice Samuel Alito in abortion cases. Alito, who replaced Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, was for the partial birth ban. O'Connor voted 7 years ago to strike the ban down.
This ruling makes clear that Justice Alito is more conservative and more in favor of stronger restrictions on abortions than was his predecessor, Sandra Day O'Connor.
Then there's the big question. Will this decision impact the basic right to an abortion established in Roe v. Wade? The answer is not yet, because yesterday's swing vote, Justice Kennedy has been a supporter of Roe. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News at the Supreme Court.
For more information on the history of abortion rulings, you'll find an interactive timeline on cbsnews.com. In sickness and in health, you've heard that at just about every wedding you've attended. Tonight, the story of a couple who have kept that vow through unbelievably trying times. They know life isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. Here's Jerry Bowen.
Bob Marshall and friends jogged through his Salt Lake City neighborhood last week, getting ready for Boston, the last marathon of his life. At age 54, he's been diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. His muscles are being destroyed. Eventually, his lungs will shut down.
Good run.
Already, his fingers have started to fail him, and his wife Debbie helps him dress. In one of life's cruel twists, Debbie Marshall knows about life-ending illnesses.
14 years ago, I was given days, if not hours, to live. I had 5 kids under 10, and I was 37.
It was advanced non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, an incurable cancer. Debbie started planning for her family's life after she was gone.
We did kind of have this expectation that she would probably die before I did.
I even went so far as to pick his wives. You can't marry this one, you can marry this one.
Ho, 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 Merry Christmas.
Year after year, holidays, birthdays, and vacations were treated as Debbie's last. The children learned to take life a day at a time, but it was hard.
You get home from school and your dad rushes down like, hey, you know, you guys, you might want to say goodbye to Mom because she's not doing too well.
But 30-plus surgeries later and 64 chemotherapy sessions and counting, her life goes on. Against all odds, she survived. And then came that day last October, shortly after Bob had run a marathon here in Utah, that their world turned upside down. After all the years of planning for Debbie's death, doctors said Lou Gehrig's disease might take Bob first. Suddenly, the Marshall family rock, Mr. Mom, was in trouble.
Everything was always going to be okay as long as he was around. You know, he took care of pretty much everything.
This just shows the income.
So plans changed. Debbie's trying to learn the ropes of the family's small newspaper publishing business. But plans for Boston stayed on course. And trailing the army of drenched runners was Bob Marshall.
From Salt Lake City, Utah.
Bent by exhaustion and pain, the man who can't tie his own shoes was determined to make it. And when he finally crossed the line 6 hours later, there was no shortage of tears from his teammates, from his family. Everyone knows his time is running out, but on this day, he never felt more alive. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Salt Lake City.
And that's the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. Good night.